Hello there, my name's Anne Hawkins, and this is another in the series that I'm doing of interviews with people who are making an impact on the world with their businesses. This all came about because of a remark someone made about big businesses are making the world much worse than it needs to be, for the sole purpose, apparently, of making rich people much, much richer. And the reaction of the people that I work with, who are all independent, free thinking, autonomous business owners, was that we can do better than that. We are better than that. And therefore, the work that we do can have a much more positive impact because we have that choice. So today I'm going to be talking to Jo Twiselton. Jo runs a consultancy called Twist Consultants. And I think it's fair to say, Jo, that what you do is help people work through periods where they have change at work. And that change can be anything from a change of leadership, a change of location, processes, different materials, all kinds of things. It doesn't matter what the change is.
Mhm.
It's to do with how individual people react to change, and how their leaders or managers think they should react, which is not always the same thing. Is that a fair assumption? A fair.
Yeah, I should actually use that recording, and thank you. So yeah, that's what I do, and I've done that on predominantly in those environments of organizations for about 20 years since I set up my own business. So it's exactly as you said. So I don't need to really elaborate on it. Um,
And am I right in thinking that it can be any sort of organisation, local government or manufacturing or engineering or anything? It doesn't really matter what the
no, it
business
doesn't
is.
really matter. I have experience in a host of different sectors, and I'm working currently in the manufacturing space and the climate tech space. However, I deal with people, so that's the bottom line, really.
Mm.
You've
Okay.
got
And
people.
and what is it that alerted you to this the thing that when people are confronted with change,
Mhm.
some get very excited and think, oh yeah, great, I really want to get into this. This could mean a new opportunity or a new way of doing things, and other people are terrified.
Mm.
So if you're a manager trying to cope, how do they know how to treat different people in their teams, and how does that work out in an organization?
So if we break it down into um, break your question down a little. So if we remember that each of us is an individual human being, none of us are the same. However, organizations and whoever else in the world would like us to be units, we are all individuals and we're very unique. And this applies to things like neurodiversity, not just change. But if we start with that premise that everyone is different, and if you're a leader or a manager, remembering that although we have to do things at scale, we're dealing with individuals, that's the best place to start. What really, I've had several of my own sort of change and transition experiences over my career. And that's when it really struck me about my own response, which was very different to someone else who was in a similar boat, but very different. So
Okay.
it's how we respond as individuals to a situation, and how can organizations make those situations easier for people.
Okay. So when a manager or a team leader is told by the hierarchy, whatever, we need to stop doing it this way and start doing it that way.
Mm.
Um, First of all, I guess they need to deal with their own reaction to that. Is that a common thing? Does anybody get a chance to step back before they start working with their team and think about how it's going to affect them personally? And how,
So, yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say, and how they might approach it,
Mm.
perhaps differently to some of their colleagues might.
Yep. Again, I've been in that boat before in my previous lives and work that I've done where I've been the one that then has to share something. There are so many dimensions to this as well. So I'm not the type. person or the way that I operate isn't that I'm going to take a message and then deliver it. I need to work out, going back to my previous point, I'm dealing with a group of individuals. So thinking about what that's going to look like, how that's going to be received, how am I feeling about it? Because we leak through our body language, particularly if we've got to communicate something that we're not is not something we're comfortable with. So to your point, if we have the opportunity for that space, that's brilliant. Quite often we have to do things at pace. That's the reality. Um, but understanding where we're coming from, because quite often people are leading and managing others that know, they all know each other, they all know how they operate. And again, as humans, we're quite wired to spot threats. So we will pick up different body language that we're not used to in somebody quite quickly. So we're looking for it. Um, and all of the triggers that you see are being invited to a meeting that just says update, all these small things. We all get on a call and the leaders like really not as engaging as they normally would be. They're a little bit, and then they have to deliver the thing that they have to do. So going right back to your question, if you have that space to be able to work out what this is, what this means for you, before you have to do anything with it. I've been in situations with leaders where they've had that space and they've decided that this is the point where they don't want to work for this organization anymore because it's gone too far from their value set. But equally, you get leaders who are quite comfortable just delivering a message. So again, we're all unique, we're all different, we all respond and react. We've got different value sets.
Okay. So when someone recognises that they need help with this and they bring you in, I mean
Yeah.
that's a whole other conversation of how they recognise that. But we'll skip over that for now. They bring you in. So how do you go about this? If everybody's different, you presumably can't work with each individual member of a team.
Mm,
You need to somehow bring them together so that they're all working on the same project towards the same end, but taking all these different reactions and different idiosyncrasies, I suppose, into
mm,
account. How do you
mm.
do that?
So the first thing, and probably the most important thing, is to create the space that people feel okay to have that conversation. And I've used three words in there, which are a bit jargony, which is space and okay. Well, two, and safe actually. But it is around, am I all right to share my view in here? Is it okay that I don't agree with other people, but that I'm comfortable that I can have this conversation that's going to get us all to the same place? That's the key. Um, it's creating that space that everyone feels confident that they will be heard, they can say what needs to be said. If it's a difficult conversation where not everybody's going to agree, so how do we then it's how are we going to deal with those difficult conversations in the room? So there's some contracting then about respecting each other's views, but having that agreement about how we're going to take this forward. And the other bit that we don't talk about very often is what we're going to do next. So when we come out of our papal conversation and the white smoke's coming, what are we going to do next with it? So those relationships are kind of key to this, how we help and support each other, which is a slightly different view to some of the approaches that I see to dealing with this. But it's very much about building that space for people to have the right conversations.
Okay, okay. So again, going back to the organisation itself, there are organisations we all know where it's a case of the top 15% of the workforce who aren't performing well will be let go, and there's no negotiation, there's no kind of dialogue going on there, and then there are others who recognise that in order to make the changes that they want to make,
Mm.
they do need help with this.
Mm.
But what is it that happens? in a room where you've created the space, they've acknowledged they need the space, so you've created this, you've made it as safe as possible. What happens when you get those conversations going?
In what sense?
Um, I'm thinking about very different characters on a team. You know, those who are impatient, who can't see what's the point of this meeting. We just
Mm,
need to go and get on with it.
yep,
Why are we talking about it? We just need to do it.
yep.
And then there are other people who are thinking, if this change happens, I could be made redundant. Should I kick back against it? Should I try and make it not happen? Should I try and make my point? Should I just leave now? There must be so many emotions going on in the room at the same time. So
Mm.
how do you cope with that? How do you get those conversations moving?
So, one of the things that I like to do before we get in the room, so if you've got a leadership team, for example, is a conversation with each of those leaders before they come together in the room. So I know where everyone's coming from, um, but they're also, again, slightly clearer about what the intention is when we get in there. You've perfectly articulated the challenge, which is my reaction might be different to yours about the fact that I'm going to be made redundant as a part of this process. I might be really angry about that. How am I going to get through that? So that initial conversation with me might be part of that. And the working together in the group might yield a different outcome. But there's also the aspect of do we need to carry on that conversation at an individual level between me and that person after that to help them through this? If that's an option for the organization, brilliant. The other piece is if you've got someone that's like, yeah, we've got to do this, it really doesn't matter. It's what's the end game and what's the ripple effect of this outside our our immediate room that we're in, or me and our organization. And that's a very different perspective. So it's really tricky. I think you can hear this from my answer to your question, is you've got, again, so many different responses. I mean, I've been in this situation countless times in my career where I've felt my initial reaction to a situation very visceral in my body. It's like, oh my God, this is terrible. Blah, blah. And then it's right, how can I talk to myself or draw on the support of others to actually get a bit of perspective on this and be able to move it forward? Part of that support piece is really key. So whenever I talk about change, and it's part of the model that I use, is how do we collaborate and connect? Because we're human beings and we are wired to connect. We are wired to be with other people, bounce stuff off each other and help each other. Whatever our current situation is, that's what we do. And it's recognizing that that's how we work best. And the ripple effect of that inside an organization can be really powerful, but it can also then have a much wider positive impact that a change has been managed and handled or delivered or whatever word you want to use, and people leave in a positive frame of mind. That's quite hard to achieve, but you can do it. I
Yeah,
firmly believe that anyway.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm sure you've actually seen it in practice.
Mm,
You've made it happen. So the bottom line, I suppose, for an organisation is that when this happens, they don't lose their best talent. As you say, they end up with a positive impact on the wider organisation, not just the team that's affected.
mm,
And I guess being able to implement the change in a timely manner and with all the different things in place does impact the bottom line in terms of profitability because there are no hold-ups or segues into other things and all that kind of thing.
mm,
So for the organisation, it feels like a no-brainer, although we all know that there are many organisations that don't think like that. Um, but what about the wider impact when people go through this process? And as you say, we're not just connected to the people that we work with, we're all members of other groups.
Mm.
So do people take something away from this experience that they can use in different ways, in their families, in their communities, their neighborhoods? Have you got any feedback from people who've done that kind of thing?
I haven't directly, to be honest, but it's the way that my work's gone. So I've taken the work that I've done in organizational change and everything that I've learned about human change, which has impacted then developing my work as a coach to that whole understanding of transition and transformation. So, what that has at an individual level, because I've looked at it at an organization level, and then now I work with organizations like local authorities where we're talking about big, impactful changes like how we're going to adapt and mitigate climate change. But also, I work on a local community group in my village. So I'm trying to bring in everything that I know about that to how we work with that at a community level, which is fascinating because we've got some similar dynamics, but also some quite different ones.
Yeah, I
So,
can I can imagine that
yeah.
must be that must be really tricky at times because in an organization people are constrained, however safe you want to make the space,
Mm.
people are constrained by certain relationships. But I'm guessing in a neighborhood community those constraints are not quite the same.
No, but it is quite interesting. So if you think about, I live in a village, quite a big village, but we've got different stakeholder groups like you would have in an organization. And you've got different pockets of different stakeholder groups. You've got different demographics. So we've got our um, Women's Institute, for example. They're all slightly older than me. But we have a youth bus that comes on a Friday night because we don't have a youth club in the village, and currently we don't have a space for that youth club to exist. So we have a bus. So we've got all these different pockets. We've got community associations, we've got history groups, we've also got Facebook groups. So then we're looking at that social media community. So the work that I've done in internal communications inside organizations and the work that I've done in PR with external bodies has set me up really. I feel very lucky that I've done that to be able to operate in our local community with those lenses at times. It's like, right, who's this stakeholder group? What change do we want to see? That's how we start the conversation. What's the change we want to see? Which is no different to the conversation that I'll start with in an organization. Then we get into behaviors. So it's all quite tied together.
Mm, mm. And all the things we've talked about so far have got you at the center of helping this change to happen, or
Mm,
helping people to deal with the change that they're going to make happen.
mm,
Um, is there a way for people who are interested in perhaps doing the kind of thing that you do, either in a small group in their own organisation, perhaps talking about climate change,
mm.
which can be a tricky thing to talk about at work, um, or in their neighbourhood. How would they get started? How do they come to understand? You've accumulated your knowledge over a number of years of working in
Mm.
industry, but how would somebody who wants to just start work helping people to do something in a small group, how could they bring all of these different things to bear?
The first word is curiosity. So I'm just a naturally nosy, inquisitive person. So I've started with conversations. That's how it got started. This wasn't how I started my career at all. I've had a very squiggly career. Getting into climate change is still a very personal thing. So I read around it, I went on courses. So I think my first guide for people would be curious, get into conversations with people. Sometimes that can feel really hard, especially at the moment, because there are lots of polarizing conversations about topics. And none of these things are black and white. So being able to see other perspectives to your own, but being able to listen to those and ask lots of questions and listen. Because as my granny said, we have two of these and one of those, and we should use them in that proportion. So doing that is the best way to get started. But get curious about somebody who's very different to you. I did that last night on our local Facebook group, but it's learning how not to be provocative, that you're going to get into an argument, but really trying to understand what's behind some of that. And I'm still learning how to do that, to be honest.
Okay. So, talking about the wider impact that we can have with our businesses on the world,
Mm.
how do you see that working out in terms of not just what you do in business, but with your local community? Are there people who are picking up this idea and making it happen in different ways?
Um, there are loads of people, um, and I know some of them through the Drive network, for example, through your work. Um, and I think what we can get into is a situation where we believe, thanks to social media and other things, that the world is quite a scary place. But actually, when you have those conversations, you find that other people want to get involved, they want to find out more, they want to do something. And I think just starting with a conversation in any way, going right back to my point about connection, just start with a conversation. Go where people are, find out where they are, and start from there. Don't start from where you are. I learned that because you're talking like that. You're talking Radio 2 and Radio 4, or even Radio 1 and Radio 4, and it's never really going to connect for those people in the UK. It's just not going to connect. So,
Mm, mm.
where are people? And go there.
Okay. 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 So as the wonderful Ellie Meredith of Actionism would say, find your tribe,
Yeah,
find the people who want to start something,
yeah.
um, and literally start from there. Yeah.
And Ellie has a really good point because in an organization context, we can put in a lot of effort into those people who don't agree with the change, the resistors, as they're called. You put a lot of energy in there, but actually, if you put your energy into the people who are kind of like probably receptive once you have a chat with them, it's a lot better use and it's very much less frustrating.
So that's brought up another interesting point. What do you do with the resistors? What do you do with the people who get left behind? What
So,
happens?
resistors, again, is a conversation. So, what's driving the resistance? Quite often it's fear.
Mm,
And one of the conversations I've had recently, or several conversations actually, um, without getting into too much politics about flags, is understanding what's driving that behavior. And a lot of it is fear.
okay.
And that word has been used specifically, and I see that in organizations. So
Mm,
when things change in organizations, there's a lot of loss associated with it.
mm,
Not just my job, things are going to be different. Am I going to lose my friends that I work with? Am I going to have to change the way that I do things? There's a whole load of loss time tied up with that, and that then drives some of those fear behaviors. So, which show up as, I don't want this to happen.
okay. And are there ways of working with the people who are experiencing that fear, or is that something that is, it's part of a different kind of work?
Sometimes it depends how big the resistance group is. I mean, there are various tactics that I use to do that. So one is conversation, another is who are the people around them that can help to have those conversations and create a different perspective. So some of it for me is like, how do we how do we paint a different picture of what this might look like? So that goes right back to my previous point about if we do this stuff well and we talk to people like human beings rather than a cog in a massive machine, then it will help them to get a different idea of what what possibility could be, rather
Mm.
than the whole really fixed mindset thing of this is going to be rubbish. I'm going to lose my job. My friends are going to leave. I'm going to have to do something different I don't like. But there's a different perspective of like, actually, this might be interesting. So there's a lot of what if questioning around that, but getting people involved in creating that as well. And
Mm.
a lot of this to organizations be like, oh my God, we haven't got time for this. Depends what outcome you want. Do you want to
Yeah.
lose people? Do you want to lose your best people? Do you want your reputation? There's a lot of reputation associated with this. There are organisations that have been in the news recently who announced that they were offshoring a load of jobs, I think earlier in the year, to India, and then suddenly decided that they were going to offload some of their poorest performers. People are not stupid. They can join the dots between those two things. So there's a whole load of things that you can do around that, Anne.
Okay. Yeah, that's really, really interesting. You can, in the last bit that you said, you can really see the parallels there between what happens in an organization in business and what happens in a community, a neighborhood, even a family group.
Yeah,
So yeah, those individual relationships and individual reactions to change
yeah,
are universal, aren't they? Right the way
yeah,
across the board. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Wow. Thank you.
It's
That
all
was that
right.
was that was fabulous. So any last things that you want to say to anybody who's watching this, who may be going through change, who may be wanting help, figuring out how they manage it themselves or how their group manages it or their
Mhm.
team at work or anything like that. What would you say to them?
So there's probably three things that I would say. The first thing is that all of this, we use the word change, that's a massive word and it creates a response in itself. When we talk about change, and if we use the word transition as well instead, so we're going from letting go of something into what can feel like a messy middle until we get to whatever's new. That process created by a guy called William Bridges is the one that I use all the time in the way that I think about this stuff. And quite often we're in the messy middle before things are going to turn out. This isn't black and white. So some of it is like, how do I learn to roll with the punches a bit better? So that's my first thing. I think my second thing is think about this. I think about this all the time, but that's because it's like the way that I'm wired. But if you think about this from an organizational context, please think about this stuff way earlier than you think you need to be. Because most of my career, when I was doing a lot of communication work, meant that I was brought in at the point that someone thought it was the right point, but we only had like this much time to make an effect. And I would love to be having these conversations about how we deal with this stuff a lot earlier. And you save yourself money. You mentioned productivity earlier. You can save yourself a lot of money, a lot of heartache, a lot of people going off sick or good people leaving. It's a bit infectious when people start to go. So, and the third thing is remember that we are all human beings. We are all on this planet. Try this little blue thing in the middle of nowhere, trying to make sense of it all. Social media isn't going to sort this out. Conversation between normal human beings who don't show up on Facebook as anonymous um, are the ones that are really going to sort it out. So try and have conversations, and it will feel really uncomfortable, but
Mm.
that's part of that letting go bit and getting into a messy middle.
All right. Okay. Okay. That's
And
that's a
talk to
great.
me. I'm always happy to talk about this stuff, as you know.
Well, I'm really glad you talked to us about it today, and I think when people listen to this when it's published, there's yeah, it's both reassuring and challenging, because it means that we can all do something about this,
Yep.
which is a good position to be in, not necessarily one that everybody wants, but it's better than feeling completely helpless.
Yes.
Uh,
And sorry, just to add on to that, it's not just you. Get into a conversation, you'll suddenly find out it's not just you.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really, really good point. Yeah. Okay. Joe, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll put message in the notes about how to contact you and all of that kind of thing. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing all those thoughts with us today. That's been
Pleasure.
great.
Thank you.